So here we are. We wore out Gene's dragster and put it in the corner, and somebody bought it and put a 35 Auburn two-door sedan body on it and went to the drag races. And I was kind of glad it went away. And then I needed a job at this point, and I got hired by Bunky Dar, D-A-R-R, at Dar Engine Service, who was the local high-performance engine machinist. He didn't sell speed equipment or anything, but he did his, and he ported and stuff like that. And I went to work to learn everything that he knew. And he taught me how to do the three-angle valve job and how to open the bowl and clean the bowl out. And I ported a couple of sets of heads for him. And I found out that that was really terrible because you breathed the cast iron and it got in your socks and your socks rusted. And it was just a terrible scene. But I lasted there about 6 months, I guess. And we had a good time. And it was there that I met Lenny Dobard. And Lenny had a K88 like Gene's, and he bought a 421 Pontiac. And Bunky hopped up the Pontiac with a roller cam and a bunch of compression and what have you. And we decided to try some nitro. So Bunky got on the phone with Gene Adams and spent, several hours with him, talking to him about how to run this nitro. And we ordered the nitro from Honest Charlie. And it came in gallon cans, believe it or not. And we put the nitro in this thing. I think we mixed 50% was what we were going to try, because we only had 820 tires at the time. They were the biggest tires we had. So we're going to put 50% in this 421 Pontiac. And we used Castrol or racing oil, which was bean oil. And the molecules in bean oil are really small. You can put it in a cast iron container and it will get out. It'll go right through the cast iron. That's how small that stuff is. Well, we had it in this motor and it'd be like weeping everywhere. You'd get a greasy film on it. I'd take it outside, soap it down, hose it off, and the next morning it'd be greasy again. Where's it coming from? Well, it was passing through the cast iron, it turns out. That's a side story. We got this thing and we fired it up on Chapatula Street. Chapatula Street was the street I was born on in Mercy Hospital. A little bit of trivia. And we drove it into the shop and it was dead rich. And we like to die breathing and stuff with this motor running. But finally, I think it was like 15 turns on the barrel valve to finally get it down to where it wasn't running raw fuel out of the headers. And we worked on that for a while and then finally got it to where it would work and respond to the throttle. And so we took it out to the drag strip the following Saturday. And I don't know if you know anything about 421 Pontiacs, but they have a main bearing about that big. And the bearing speed is horrific. And it ate the bearings out of it and pitched a chunk out of it. That ended that scene. It was over a period of about 6 weeks that we tried to make that Pontiac run, and it ended up a disaster. And at that point, other guys were getting newer cars. The Scotty Finn cars were kind of phasing out. Cue Ball had moved on to a Fuller car, and Ronnie Sylvester got a car from California with a full body on it, looked just like the OCMP car. And Wayne Smythe, who was a friend of mine, talked me into going to work at the shipyard where he worked. He was a draftsman. And he had purchased a lefty car. And this is it right here. This is one of Lefty's twin engine cars. And Jake had two 265 inch Chevys that were built for the 266 class hydro in boat racing. So we took that chassis, came in the box just like the K88 did, we put those two 265s in it, and we put a 512 rear end gear in it, because those motors would run $9,000 without any trouble at all. And we spent, I don't know, 3 months building this car, doing the body, and I bent a lot of the tin on it. Wayne's talent was welding, and we just kind of made it a pretty damn nice car. And he painted it green, and he called it the Wampus Kitty. And we loaded on a trailer. We're going to go down to Jake's and show him the car now that it's finished. We loaded on a trailer and hook it to the back of my Chevy, and we start over the Huey P. Long Bridge going to New Orleans. And the bridge has a little transition from where it's arched to where it's straight, and there's kind of a lump there. And I went over that lump, and the trailer did this, then it did this. And I said to Wayne, I'd never had a trailer go out of control on me before. I said, should I stand on it or hit the brakes? He said, stand on it. Well, I did, and it accelerated the problem. And the trailer swings over and hits the railing in the bridge and takes out about 30 feet of the railing on the bridge and breaks the rear wheel off at the end of the bell and the beginning of the housing on a Ford rear end. You know, you got your bell on the side of the quick change, then there's the tube going out here. It broke right there. And Wayne figured that was a stroke of luck, that if he'd have got in it with it like that, it would have failed and he'd have got hurt. So we loaded the car back on what was left of the trailer. It took the rear corner of the Chevy and tweaked it pretty good. And we took it back to the house, and then we drove down to Jake's and proceeded to drink some of Jake's whiskey. We got good and drunk. And it was a disastrous day. And we stripped it all down, got it all down to metal again, and put it back together, and then that's the configuration it went together to run. And we took it to the drag strip, and the day that picture was taken was a test day, and Jake had his 34 coupe out there, and Gene Zeller had his car, and we had that one, and Jake's car makes a run, and it ran really good. The guy, because it was test day, Lucian turned it around on the drag strip and is coming back, and he hit the gas and the throttle stuck. And he's coming at the starting line as fast as that coupe will go. And he's trying to find a place not to hit anybody. I have gone to the front gate to let Wayne's wife in. She's coming up to see what's going on. Jake and his wife and Gene Zeller and a bunch of other people standing around, and then there's the pits with 3 or 4 cars back in the pits. This is at La Place. He comes here and he hits Gene in the knee and knocks him up in the air and dislocates his knee like this. Mm. I mean, it came out of the socket and is sideways like this. And he goes through the chain link fence. He breaks the chain link fence loose, and it wraps around Jake's wife. Wrapped her up in chain link and threw her on the ground and hit her head. She's laying there bleeding. Gene can't move, his legs hurt. The car goes through the pits and hits a 38 Chevy coupe that's parked there. And it's on jack stands, and the guy's underneath it. And the car falls on the guy, and it's sitting against it going like this, and he finally gets it shut off.
With the guy underneath the car?
Yeah. I turn around, having been at the gate, and I hear all this commotion, and I see this coupe, and I'm going, what the hell is happening? I drive back over there, and it looks like a war zone. All the fences are torn down. Jake's wife's laying on the ground. Jake's administering to her. Billy Ryan and a couple of other people that were with Gene are on the ground with him because his leg is all disconnected, and there's people running over to the coop to see if the guy that was laying underneath it is all right. And I'm going, my God.
Which way do I go?
So I get on the phone. There's a phone in the tower, and I worked at the drag strip on the weekends. I go in the tower and I get the highway patrol. And here they come, and they bring all the emergency equipment. And that was the day that this car rolled out for the first time. We never did get to run it that day because all of that happened before we got it ready to race. So once that all settled down and we went back to the racetrack with it, we started up, and I walk up to it, it's supposed to be getting temperature, and I got a bodacious shock. The spark jumped from the drag link to my knee and knocked the dog shit out of me. It really thumped me. A magneto turning at 1,500 RPM is going to put out quite a bit. And the chassis was obviously charged by one of the two magnetos, and that's what was happening. So we got on the phone to Lefty and talked to him about had he ever had that problem, because the car is essentially identical to his, except he's got 400 inches and we got 265s. Said, could the metal be too close to the spark plugs? Because the chassis bar ran down about that far below the spark plugs. As it went down the side, you can see where this thing goes down there. The chassis bar is just below it, and there's the spark plugs right there. So they're pretty close to the spark plugs, and they could have been picking up some kind of electricity. The best we could get that car to run was 875 and 179. And we never could get the motors to run the same. We changed them. We had the same problem that Nye Frank had with the pulsator. No matter where you put the motors, straight up, fire like a big V8, 90 degrees apart, 180 degrees apart, didn't change a thing. It ran the same every time, and it was lazy. And Boogie Scott drove it. Boogie knew what he was doing, and he says it's just lazy. And remember that we had a 512 rear end in that sucker with 820 tires. So if it was going to run, it would have screamed. But it just was lazy, and we never could figure it out. And we had alcohol in it. That was it. We didn't have any. The motors were set up for the boat races, which used alcohol. And so the motors were known factors. I mean, Jake had one of those, them 16-man lifeboats? They're kind of hexagon shaped. He built a motor mount on that, put the shaft down in the inside, filled that thing with water, put the propeller down in there, and that was his dyno. And those motors would sit there and run at 8,000, turning that water in that lifeboat, an hour if you wanted them to. I mean, they were really turned out motors, but they would not run together. Just absolutely would not. So he sold that car to Cunningham, who ended up being Glenn's partner. Terry ran it as an unblown car, single engine unblown car for one weekend, and then Glenn put his motor in the car, and that's how they got started with their partnership.
And that's Glenn Cupid and Terry Cunningham.
Glenn Cupid and Terry Cunningham, and
old-time friends from Don's.
New Orleans racers from that era,
similar age,
50s, 60s, right in there. There's I'll leave you this one. It's a bigger shot.
Okay.
And Leonard Dobart, who had the K88 with the 421 Pontiac, he had me order a car from Lefty, which was a single engine fuel car.